Good evening. I'm Molly Charlie.
And I'm Dr. Carenza, Dr. Greg Carenza, principal here at Walnut Hills.
Awesome. And he's agreed to sit with me and answer some questions about parental involvement and engagement here at Walnut Hills Elementary.
Sure.
So, all right, what are 2 or 3 programs or activities that you do in your school to promote and or increase parent involvement with their child's education?
Well, I jotted down 4, so I'm going to go above extra credit. But the first one I thought was just our PTO. We have an outstanding parent-teacher organization. As an example, they're just really strong. We have an executive board, vice president. There isn't a president by rules, but there's a vice president, a treasurer, a social chair, and a second vice president. So they really organize monthly meetings, and then we meet as an exec board once a month. So we have a lot of contact, and we do a lot through our PTO. Our PTO is incredibly supportive.
Awesome.
Yes, fundraising is one way you get parents involved. That's fundraisers can be a necessary evil, right?
Yep.
I don't always want parents to think we're trying to ask for money, but we also do a lot of cool things that support teachers. So a lot of involvement that way from our parents.
Awesome.
We have one of the things I'm probably most proud of that we've done here is we have a DEI or EDI and diversity, equity, and inclusion team.
Oh, awesome.
That's a parent team. We also have a DEI team that's made up of of teachers, and what they meet separately because of just the time of the day and kind of our committee structures here at the building. But we have a group of parents who are working to really help support the work of inclusion in our schools and equity and diversity, and they are terrific. Like in a way in which it can be sensitive or challenging content, they have the right philosophy of building bridges, not walls. Great. And so it's really great. So that's one that's
awesome. I mean, that is exactly bringing the community in.
Right.
So
right. And they do it in a way that makes it safe, even if people don't agree with us or agree with the work. For whatever reason, it doesn't make them a bad person. It makes our committee stronger.
Yeah,
is what
absolutely.
we see. So,
thank you.
And then we have another one would be our SIAC, our School Improvement Advisory Committee, which is required by law for every district to have SIAC.
Yep.
So we choose 3 or 4 families that come to that meeting 3 times a year or 4 times a year, and they advise us on our goals. We update them both at the building and the district level with things like bullying data, our building goals, our student achievement progress. Wow. So they're really a sounding board for that work. So we have a lot. It's a lot of parental involvement. And we try and balance the people that are on there so we get a wide variety of input, representing students of different grades, gender, nationality, just so that we have a lot of representation over those groups.
That's great.
So,
thank you. All right, question 2. Do you have any way to gather feedback from parents that provide you some direction for programs, policies, changes, etc.? And if yes, what are your methods of gathering feedback and how often do you use them?
Yeah. Well, we do have ways of gathering feedback. Sorry, that was me again. I bumped the table.
You're good.
We have ways of gathering.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. We have ways of gathering feedback. We have 600, and I should have shared maybe a little bit about Walnut Hills, so you have that for your paper or whatever. So it's a K-5 elementary serving 650 kids.
I wonder the enrollment.
The enrollment's fluctuated, but we also lost preschool, so it's gone down. But we serve a lot of kids. I mean, we have nearly 100 staff members if you added them all together with, cooks, custodians, custodians, teachers, associates, everything. And probably our free and reduced rate's about 5.5%. So families of fairly affluent, but we also have the opposite. So we have just lots of diverse opinions. Families here are outstanding. So probably the first way I wrote down is that SIAC is one of the best ways, where as we present our building goals to families, we have a representative sample of families, so they're able to ask good questions, maybe get us thinking about the work that we're doing, which I love. So that's more face-to-face and live, not system. So it's not representative of everybody, but it is representative of at least voices that make up our building.
Sure.
We do have an annual climate and culture goal that we work on, and as part of that annual goal, we give a survey Unfortunately, we used a survey a long time ago that we didn't love.
Mm-hmm.
So in my first year, we didn't end up giving it, to transition to the next year being COVID, where we shut down early, to next year not having everybody here at the building, and
Right.
it just not being a typical year to measure climate and culture.
Mm-hmm.
So this year we're going to start back with a new survey for families that will be baseline. So we have no
Right.
expectations other than we hope to have 60% complete. We feel like a 60% participation rate
Mm-hmm.
would be representative of our families.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
third, being present. Like I just, you'll find me out in the parent pickup line,
Great.
at drop off, dismissal, bus, wherever.
Not
parent-teacher
hiding behind
conferences,
the
not
desk.
hiding behind the desk, because that's the fastest way somebody will give you feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's a part of it. And
Awesome.
then lastly is PTO. It's a great chance for us to present, so we may give some content. But then to ask questions or to have the back and forth.
Right.
It can be nerve-wracking because you're in front of everybody and you maybe don't know what's coming at you. But at the same time, people aren't there to embarrass. We're there to learn about our building and to get better. So
And that dialogue is so important.
yes,
So.
yep.
Thank you. Am I at 4?
3.
3, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do parents, we kind of are talking about parents. What role in decision making in your school do they have?
That was one that I said yes, but it's limited.
Yep, right.
I mean, we don't involve them in handbook decisions. We don't involve them in classroom assignments of placements. We don't involve them in that. But I do think decisions we make around what goals are important to our families, or if we're doing like PBIS, the positive behavior intervention supports, things like that that have us interacting with their children around discipline or behavior. They have some not decision making but input. Maybe that's hard. Maybe the word decision making is tricky in that one. I'm not sure they're making any decisions.
They're not doing the final say, but they're giving your input.
But they're giving input, which is helpful in us making sound decisions. So I guess the role is that they provide input.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe when I read it that way.
We just take the role.
Which it's just feedback. One of the best things I ever learned from somebody was, when parents give feedback, it's just feedback. It's what you do with it that matters. So if one person out of 646 says something about our policies is bad, do we change the policy, or do we try and see if there's more people that feel that way, or do we listen for themes? Some of that's important, just to, like, if I'm starting to hear a lot that something in the parking lot is wrong, then I probably need to do some of that.
Right.
So
great. All right. So what tools, such as newsletters, websites, social media platforms, or on-site events, newspaper, etc., do you use to communicate with parents, and how often do you communicate throughout the year?
Well, I'm just old enough to believe that this is probably the most important part of all of this is communication, proactive communication. So we have a semi-monthly newsletter, so every other Friday it goes out. And we just got a new software system called Parent Square that I love. So user-friendly. And from a district, it's not just a building level one, it's a district level. It does so much, it's incredible. So we use Parent Square, and it's so user-friendly. I start building my newsletters just over the 2 weeks. Somebody sends me something that needs to go in there, I can just drop it in and save it. And so it's not like I have to sit down in one night and hammer it out, but try to keep it proactive, like what's coming up, looking ahead, explaining. I also have like a newsletter, just a greeting from me. Tries to explain things like building goals or a seasonal concept, or like this month's the one that goes out Friday is obviously about being thankful.
Yep, absolutely.
And things that I'm thankful for. So try to communicate that way. We also have Twitter.
Okay.
We have a Facebook page.
Okay.
Although, personally, I went off of Facebook, or at least I have a profile, but I went off of it because it was getting so bad. And but I think it's so important that we communicate out that way. Ours is only positive communication goes through Facebook. We have a PTO website that the PTO maintains that I think is very important. They do a great job. Their website has taken off. Email, can have its ups and downs. I do like email. It's just convenient. It's fast, but and we can carbon a lot of people in it if we have to.
Right.
Text messaging. we have the ability through Parent Square to be able to
Okay.
text message and do some things like that. So that's if you have a really short burst or something that you
Yep.
want to send out. So can do it that way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do teachers use any other tools on their own?
Well, they all have to go through Parent Square
Okay.
for their communication. So any of their newsletters are through Parent
Okay.
Square, but they use Seesaw. So I
Okay,
don't know if you're familiar with Seesaw, and so they upload a lot of student work through there. They'll communicate through email, text, the Remind app. I mean, they could use those, but main communication. We try to steer them away from Facebook and things like
Right.
that. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, kind of going into question 5. How do you communicate information about your school to the community at large? Do you have a system or procedure to gather input feedback from the general community about your school?
Well, that's a good question. We don't right now have anything to communicate about our school. I mean, we have the district website. So I think there's ways that if we have a feel good story here at the building, like, so we just installed disc golf
Oh, awesome.
stations. We have 6 stations around the
cool.
building.
But PE loves that.
Oh
in the
my
community,
gosh,
'cause
they
can
do.
use that.
And it was funded by partially a grant that the PE teachers received, partially by PTO, and partially by the building. So that was a huge collaboration. And so that's a feel-good story we should be communicating about. So our communications department came out and filmed kids playing and did a story. And one of our communications person has a background in news, like actually like was at a news station somewhere. So his stories very much feel like what you might see on the news. But that goes on the website. So I would say the community at large can see that.
Yeah.
Facebook and Twitter could be seen by a larger audience. Honestly, no, we do not have a system or procedure to gather input or feedback from the general community. I mean, they will call and let me know when our flag is shredded, when the pond over here, the kids are being obnoxious in winter and throwing rocks.
Right.
If kids are doing, dropping bottles on the playground or something, like, they will let us know. So I do feel like the people that surround here are
in the direct community. Yep.
Yeah, they want to see the school
right for
successful.
their neighborhood.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, what are a few of the parent concerns that you deal with most often in your position as a principal?
Yeah.
Are there any issues that are more difficult than others?
Well, I'd say I wrote down 2, but there's well, this year, summer contextual, so masks and masking has been huge here in our district because Waukee chose optional masks.
Right.
And so we're dealing with how to educate everybody safely and dealing with that, but then could require masking at times. It's just that's been really challenging. So contextually, that's just where we're at right now. That is not something I hope goes away.
Right, like we talked earlier.
Please, hope it goes away.
Yeah.
Bullying and safety and security of kids are what I hear the most of.
Okay.
Parents concerned about an incident that's happened at recess or something that's happened somewhere. So we'll investigate. We always investigate and want to make sure kids are safe. That's number 1. The bullying and harassment forms will, if that's, we will follow up with providing those forms. Parents generally want their kids, they don't want to fill out those forms, but they want their kids they want to ensure that it's being followed up on and kids are being safe. So behavior is a big one. So student behavior, students whose behavior is so severe that we have to remove them from a classroom or remove them, however it goes, or they have consequences. That's a big one. Equity, diversity, and inclusion, you can imagine. I don't think anybody that I've worked with has ill intents. I think they have concerns about direction that things are going, or what's being taught, and maybe it's just more education, and they're not right or wrong. We just have to learn to navigate that.
Right.
I think we deal a lot with like mental health, and so it's a little bit different for me because they're coming from a concern for their child. It's maybe not something the school has done, as we're probably trying everything we have to be able to help them be successful. They're just concerned, scared for their child, need some assistance, that sort of bit.
Yeah, thank you. What are a few community issues or concerns that you deal with most often? What kinds of non-school groups contact you with concerns or issues, if any?
I don't think at the elementary level I get much of that. The community issues and concerns that we deal with most often are obviously around well, like appropriate use of social media,
Sure.
like our kids being respectful and responsible, harassment, those kinds of things that I think are a community issue.
Sure.
We also, if you're watching TV at all, that local politics are playing a part in school board elections. So to be honest, just concerns with parents who are concerned about the direction of the school district, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Right.
So we aren't immune to that here in Waukee, where we
Okay.
have a lot of resources, but we
Right.
also have parents who are very actively involved. So figuring out that political stance right now is interesting.
Challenging. Yeah.
Like non-school groups would be. I mean, I don't know if they would. We have a lot of people wanting to help, not with a lot of concerns. So
That's a good place to be.
it is a good place. Like the Boy Scouts want to come and help and beautify our school grounds.
Nice.
I'm trying to think we had a non-school group contact about giving us masks that they had sewn. So I think they want to be helpful. I honestly don't see non-school groups contacting me with
For
concerns.
concerns. That's
The
awesome.
only one that's a non-school is safety in the neighborhood. So Waukee has neighborhood elementary schools. So, we're surrounded by side streets where drivers aren't always safe or aware of what's happening. So, where you get off the main thoroughfare here of 156th Street, but if you go into the side streets, Aurora or Winston Avenue and things like that, people aren't paying attention. Kids are running in front of cars. I mean, so some of those, I probably get a ton of speeder calls, like as if I could control what's happening out there on the street. But I think they're generally expressing concern, and I can appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And they want to see some changes.
Yeah, thank you. All right, just a couple more. Related to teachers now, any teacher-related concerns that you deal with most often to prevent potential school-community relationship problems? What are a few of those?
Well, behavior. We want to make sure that our kids are safe here at school. So we have students who do require intensive needs with regards to their behavior. We're seeing more of that post-pandemic. Although I don't know, the pandemic's not over, but past, now that we've returned to a more normal setting. So a lot of those kids that have missed, if you're a second grader right now, you had a potentially strange first grade year, either online or just more rigid because we had masks and separation, and not much of a kindergarten year. So a lot of those years where there was just really important building blocks and foundational skills. I think a lot of those, both socially, emotionally, and academically, are still there. I don't know that it results in school community relationship problems, only other than they want to know what it is that we're doing in order to fill that gap. And we are trying, a stronger MTSS system, we're just focused on instruction here. We're just really hitting instruction hard with our students and helping them also teaching social emotional behavior skills and working with kids. I would say teacher-related skills or concerns that you deal with most often is the impact of House File 804. I think it's 802 or 804. I apologize. I think it's 804.
804, I believe.
With, what can you teach in a classroom or say or not be able to say with regards to race or... we are not teaching critical race theory. We know that and at the elementary it's different. It's just wanting to make sure that we also advance the cause of equity and diversity and inclusion. But also understanding that the legislature has said there are some ways of doing that in which could be troublesome. So unpacking those kinds of things that could lead to some teacher, school, community relationship problems, I think could be there.
Good. All right. Is there someone that you call or notify when difficult issues like these or those mentioned occur? Does your district have a procedure for principals to follow when communicating with parents, the community, or the press?
Well, we've had that, my first call would be to my assistant superintendent, who's my supervisor, and I trust them implicitly. I mean, it's actually a relief. Like, I've never felt more supported in my time as a principal, and that makes all the difference in the world. So we're also very careful as best as we can not to get ourselves into those positions and to be aware. So I think we're all working hard to do a good job by our families and to make them feel safe and secure here at school. So I would call him first. I know he would communicate with the superintendency of, at the district office around issues, but they'll be the first to advise. I know we really cannot make a statement to the press.
Right.
Now, there's a difference between me being able to go and issue an email that could later be used by press. I can issue an email, but I would also check with our communications chair. So if a news channel was here or the newspaper called, I would not. That would all go through our communications department
At the district level.
At the district
Okay.
level, which we're thankful for,
Yes.
obviously. But also, they may have a better sense of what the dynamics are that we want to be careful with. So I will always meet with parents. In challenging times, I extend, hey, come on in. Like, this is going to be a tough conversation, but
Right.
let's have it, and let's have that conversation in a way that's respectful for everybody. I'll always listen, and that's one of my mantras. Is being a listener first.
Yeah.
So I think people know that, but I think it also prevents a lot of issues.
A lot of other
So,
issues. Well, thank you. I guess question 10 is kind of wrapping up. Do you have any suggestions or tips for me as I prepare for an administrative position and work with parents and community members in the near future?
Well, I would say, one of the number one predictors of a school's success is parent and community involvement. And I think I see so too often that is not in place, like that people don't understand that is well researched, well known, that the more involved parents are as part of a school, the more likely it is to experience success. So I would always say don't be afraid of parent feedback and input.
Right.
It's just feedback, and I agree it can be really tough sometimes, but working together with, I also say just working with your colleagues. So if you're in the only elementary in a district, that makes it easier, but there's 10 or 9 elementaries now, soon to be 10 next year.
Wow.
And so any one of us that acts in a certain way could potentially have implications for others. And so I think just knowing that we all work in a system, and so thinking about how our actions at the building can impact the system is really, really important. I think it takes a lot of time. So in your mindset, because I want to do the positive rewards for kids.
Yeah.
I want to call parents. It's Peter. Is it Peter Senge talks about, or maybe it's not Senge. Sorry, it's not
That's
Peter
okay.
Senge. It's who does the 7 Habits? Oh, I'm just completely having a moment.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective.
Yeah, Covey.
Covey.
Oh,
I
I'm
was gonna
so
say
sorry.
Covey. Yep.
Stephen Covey,
Yep.
I think, talks about the emotional piggy bank, and so you can't. There's times when if you've taken over a building of, in this case, 700 kids, you cannot make a deposit into 700 piggy banks shortly in a short amount of time. So there are going to be times when you have to make a withdrawal, but always remembering to keep putting money in somebody's piggy bank, whether it's your teachers, so that when you have to have communication, when you do work with parents, if you have to make a withdrawal for whatever reason,
Right.
maybe they perceive that you've done something, or that they're not doing it on an empty piggy bank. And so I just say being open and honest, being transparent to the greatest degree possible. Is really important.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
And
you.
that'll include our interview today.
Okay. See you later.